My name is Joyce, and I am 55 years old. For most of my son Leo's life, there was one rule in our house that was as constant and unyielding as the old oak tree in the front yard. He was never under any circumstances to go down into the basement. This was not a rule born from punishment or from a desire to be mysterious. It was born from a time of such profound grief and personal struggle that I could not find the words to explain it, not to my sweet, curious boy. He grew from a toddler to a young man in this house, and through all those years, he honored that strange prohibition. He might glance at the heavy wooden door, his eyebrows knitted in a fleeting question, but his hand never touched the iron latch. That door remained closed, and the silent world behind it remained my own private territory, a place where I kept something far more fragile than any family heirloom. That delicate, unspoken balance held for 28 years. It held until Leo fell in love with a woman named Chloe, and the careful world I had built began to crack at the foundations. Before we go any further down this path, I would love to know where you are joining me from today. If you have ever had a private corner of your world, a space, or a memory you hold close to your heart, please take a moment and tell me the name of your city or town in the comments below. Let's build a connection right from the start. And if you are ready to understand the true weight of that basement door and the devastating consequences when it was forced open, please hit that subscribe button. Your support means I can continue sharing these true stories from a life fully lived with all its scars and its hard-won wisdom. Now, let's begin at the beginning. Leo brought Chloe home for dinner on a crisp autumn evening, the kind that makes the leaves on our maple trees look like they're on fire. He was beaming his arm around her shoulders, and I saw in his face the same hopeful, trusting light that his father David always had. I wanted more than anything to be happy for him. I spent 2 days preparing a perfect meal, a roasted chicken with herbs from my garden, garlic mashed potatoes, and an apple pie. Chloe was beautiful, sharp as a tack, and talked a mile a minute about digital branding and audience engagement. She complimented the pie, but her eyes were busy. They traveled over the inherited sideboard, the slightly faded rug from my grandparents, the crystal decanters that had never held anything more expensive than sherry. I saw her mind working, assigning values, calculating square footage. She called our home a place filled with the echoes of Leo's childhood laughter and the quiet companionship of my later years, a wonderful vintage property. It sounded like a real estate listing. Their engagement came just a few months later, a sudden decision that felt more like a business merger than a romantic promise. When they asked if they could stay in the upstairs guest room while they looked for a place, I said yes, my stomach tightening with a premonition I couldn't name. The atmosphere of the house shifted. The quiet was replaced with the constant ping of her phone, video call interviews, and loud conversations about market trends. Then the questions began. They were casual, dropped into conversation like loose change. A basement in a house this old must be huge. Is it finished? You could really add to the property value with a proper apartment down there. One evening, reading by the fireplace, I looked up and saw her. She was at the basement door, not just looking, but running her fingers along the edge of the frame, testing for give. She didn't see me watching. The next morning, I called a locksmith. The old key and knob lock was replaced with a modern digital keypad. The sound of the deadbolt sliding home with an electronic chirp felt like the only defense I had left. The new lock didn't stop her. It just changed the game. Chloe's casual suggestions hardened into a persistent strategy. She left printouts of comparable property sales on the coffee table, certain numbers circled in red. She talked to Leo at breakfast about unlocking the asset and leveraging the equity. My home, my refuge, was being dissected as a financial opportunity. My gentle Leo began to look perpetually tired, a faint line of stress between his brows. He was being pulled in 2 directions, and I could see him slowly bending under the pressure. One night, after Chloe had gone upstairs in a huff over my refusal to even discuss a property assessment, he found me in my bookbinding workshop, a small sunlit room off the kitchen. Mom, he started, his voice weary. This thing with the basement. It's becoming a real problem. Chloe just doesn't understand. She thinks there must be a reason, a practical reason. Is there, is it structurally unsafe? Are there hazardous materials down there? If I could give her a concrete reason, maybe she'd let it go. His question hurt more than anger would have. He wasn't seeking to understand my need for privacy. He was seeking a plausible excuse to give his wife. The reason is that it is private, Leo. I said, my voice tight. My private space. That is the only concrete reason you or she needs. The invasion became more brazen. A few days later, I noticed fresh fine scratches around the stainless steel faceplate of the keypad's silvery marks that hadn't been there before. The final straw came when I was outside weeding my flower beds beneath the open kitchen window. I heard Chloe's voice clear and confident on a phone call. A digital lock, but please. Those basic models are a joke. There are a dozen ways to bypass them. I'm telling you, she's hiding something down there worth a fortune. The old ones always are. I froze my hands, clutching damp earth. I wasn't an old one, hiding treasure. I was a person protecting a sacred, vulnerable part of my history. I knew I couldn't just stand guard. I had to remove the target. I found a 3-day archival preservation conference in Boston and registered immediately. As I loaded my suitcase into the car, Leo hugged me. Have a good trip, Mom. Learn lots. I held him by the shoulders, making him look at me. Leo, the house, and the basement. Remember. He nodded, but his eyes flickered toward the house, and in that flicker I saw his allegiance waver. The conference was a world of acid-free paper, and the smell of book glue, a world I usually loved. But my mind was 100 miles north in my threatened home. I called Leo on the first evening. Everything's quiet, Mom, he said, his tone breezy. Don't worry about a thing. On the second night, as I was preparing for bed, my phone buzzed on the hotel nightstand. It was an alert from a forgotten app. Years ago, Leo, in a fit of concern after a series of petty burglaries in our town, had installed a simple wireless contact sensor on the basement door and linked it to my phone. It was meant to chime if the door opened while I was home. I'd never turned the notifications off. The message was blunt, basement door open. 10:48 p.m. My blood turned to ice. I called Leo. It rang 5 times before he answered. Hello? His voice was thick, muffled. Leo, my app says the basement door is open. What is going on? A long, hollow silence. I could hear his breathing, quick and shallow. That's impossible. The app must be glitching. It's an old system. Is Chloe there? I asked, each word precise. She took a sleeping pill. She's out cold. Mom, really, it's nothing. Go to sleep. The lie was so transparent, it was an insult. Leo, walked to the basement door right now. Look at it. Tell me what you see. More rustling, a distant thump. It's closed, Mom. I'm looking right at it. It's fine. You're stressing over nothing. He hung up. I did not sleep a wink. I sat in a chair by the hotel window, watching the city lights, feeling a profound, isolating fear. It wasn't about objects being stolen. It was about my deepest self being exposed, judged, and ridiculed. I drove home on the third day through a drizzle that matched my mood. The app was silent. I clung to that silence like a lifeline, praying it meant my secret was still safe. I was on the final stretch of highway, about 40 minutes from my exit. The windshield wipers keeping a slow, hypnotic rhythm when the call came through the car speakers. It was Leo. The sound that filled my car was not a voice. It was a raw, animalistic keening, choked with tears and hyperventilation. Mom, you have to come home now. She's down there. Chloe is in the basement. The door is wide open and she won't come out. The panic in his voice was so absolute, it seemed to suck the air from the car. And yet, a strange steel-cold calm settled in the center of my being. The feared thing had happened. The vault was open. Leo, I said, my voice low and controlled, a stark contrast to his hysteria. Take a breath. Tell me exactly what you see. Slowly. He tried to gulp air. I went. I went to the hardware store. For paint samples. I was gone an hour. I came in the back door and saw the light from the basement hall. The door is just open. The keypad is all dark. It's not responding. I yelled for her, and she yelled back. I'm down here. Mom, there's a black smudge on the door jamb. Is it blood? What is in there? What have you been hiding all these years? Is it something illegal? Oh God, tell me. His terror had spiraled into a wild, accusatory nightmare. In his mind, the unknown had become monstrous criminal. I focused on the rain-smeared taillights of the car ahead of me. Leo, listen to my voice. You are going to walk down those stairs right now. You are going to find Chloe and you are going to bring her up to the kitchen. Do not let her touch a single thing. Do not let her bring anything up with her. I am 35 minutes away. Do it. Now. I ended the call. My foot pressed the accelerator down. The car surged forward, the wipers slapping faster. My hands were steady, but inside a dam built over a decade was bursting. She was in the flood. She was drowning in my past. The remaining drive was a tunnel of memory. The images came unbidden, vivid and painful. The paralyzing silence that filled this house after the police officer came to the door to tell me about David's accident. The social worker's visits, her kind but probing questions about whether I, in my catatonic state, could provide a stable environment for my 17-year-old son. The bone-deep shame of failing Leo, of being so consumed by my own ocean of sorrow that I could barely keep him fed and clothed, let alone comforted. The therapist, a patient woman, with a soft voice finally said, Joyce, the words aren't coming. You need to find another language, a physical one. The basement was cold, unfinished, and most importantly, it was away from Leo. I bought gallons of cheap latex paint and bundles of thick brushes. I had no intention of making art. I had a need to make the internal external, to get the poison out. In the deepest hours of the night, I would descend and pour my anguish onto the concrete canvas of the walls. Muddy greens for sickness, acid yellows for anxiety. I wrote fragments of sentences over and over until they became abstract shapes. I drew endless looping lines that led nowhere. It was a visual documentation of a nervous breakdown. I kept Leo away not because I was guarding a secret, but because I was guarding him from the terrifying spectacle of his mother utter unraveling. I needed him to remember the woman who sang off-key in the car, not the wraith who wept onto a concrete floor. I pulled into the driveway. The kitchen light blazed, the back door standing ajar. I walked inside, and the scene was one of surreal, silent disaster. The basement door was open, a yawning mouth of shadows. Leo was sitting on the floor, his back against the hallway wall, his knees pulled to his chest, rocking slightly. And from below, the stark, unforgiving glare of the single bare bulb I never used spilled up the stairs, illuminating the floating dust. In the center of that artificial daylight stood Chloe. She wasn't holding a box of silver or a stack of bonds. She was holding one of my large stretched canvases, one dominated by a frantic swirling vortex of gray and black with tiny desperate strokes of white trying to break out. She turned as she heard my footsteps on the top stair. Her face was not lit with the glee of discovery. It was frozen in an expression of utter bewilderment and a deep instinctive recoil. For what felt like a full minute, the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and Leo's ragged breathing. Chloe finally broke the silence, her voice too loud in the stillness. Joyce, she said, her tone a mixture of disbelief and something like disgust. What is all this? This is just madness. You locked this away like it was Fort Knox. She gestured around at the walls, now fully exposed in the cruel light, covered in the visceral residue of my old torment. Leo lifted his head. His tear-streaked face followed her gesture, and for the first time, he truly saw it. He saw the years of my silent struggle, painted in bold, unhappy strokes. His expression shifted from fear to a devastating, heartbreaking comprehension. Mom, He whispered the word cracking in the middle. All this time. This was it. I walked down the stairs slowly, each step an effort. I approached Chloe and without a word took the heavy canvas from her hands. I leaned it carefully against the old workbench, face to the wall. Then I turned to her. All my anger, my fear, my years of protective secrecy had burned away, leaving only a cold ash-grey truth. My voice when I found it was quiet and terribly clear. "This is not madness," I said, looking directly into her confused eyes. "This is a ledger, a balance sheet of pain. Every mark on these walls is a day I fought to stay above water, so I could be there for him." I glanced at Leo, my heart breaking for the innocence he was losing in this moment. "The fortune you were so sure I was hiding. Chloe does not exist. The only thing of value down here was my right to fall apart in private, so I could put myself back together in a way that let me be his mother. You have just vandalized that right." I drew a slow breath, gathering the last of my strength. I looked at my son, my words final and unshakable. "Leo, I love you. But I will not spend another day in a home where my most vulnerable self is treated like a crime scene to be investigated. She leaves this house tonight for good, or I will list this house with a realtor tomorrow morning. This is not a negotiation. It is the new reality. The choice is yours." The silence that followed my words was so deep and heavy. It felt like a physical presence in the room, pressing down on all of us. Leo stared at the floor, his face a mask of agony. He looked at Chloe, who had crossed her arms, her earlier confusion, hardening into defensive indignation. Finally, his gaze traveled back to me, standing amid the raw evidence of my survival. He was not looking at the idealized, always strong mother now. He was looking at a human being shattered and painstakingly reassembled. He pushed himself up from the floor, his movements slow as if he were moving through deep water. He walked to Chloe. He didn't shout. He didn't argue. His voice, when it came, was flat, hollowed out by exhaustion and revelation. "Chloe, pack your bags. I'll take you to a hotel. We're done." What erupted then was a storm of protest, shrill accusations about betrayal, about family, about how I was a manipulative old woman, poisoning her son against her. But Leo stood firm. He didn't engage. He simply waited, a statue of resolve, until her anger spent itself against his silent wall. He helped her gather her things, his motions methodical and detached. I stayed in the living room, listening to the sounds of an ending zipper's drawers closing, footsteps on the stairs. After the car pulled away, Leo returned. We sat in the quiet living room, not speaking, letting the familiar shadows of the house settle around us. In the weeks that followed, we began to talk in a way we never had. I explained the shades and textures of that long despair. He apologized not just for Chloe, but for his own unwillingness to see the truth, for letting her narrative blind him to mine. He found a small apartment in the nearby town, a necessary space for him to stand on his own, to process the complicated reality of his parents, a father lost too soon, and a mother who was far more fragile than she ever let on. And I began the slow, deliberate work of reclaiming my sanctuary. I did not paint over the basement walls. Instead, I brought in more lights. I selected a few small abstract pieces that held a strange weathered beauty, and had them professionally framed. They hang in my study now, not as decorations, but as landmarks on a map of survival. I even reached out, offering to lead a small informal creative writing and art group at the local library for others who have known deep loss. I learned, in the most painful way possible, that a secret kept out of love can become a prison of isolation. And I learned that the bravest action is not reinforcing the lock, but choosing with great care to give the key to someone who has proven they will honor the treasure of your trust. So I ask you, from this quieter, more truthful home, what is the locked door in your life? What chapter of your story feels too ragged, too stained with tears to share? I'm not saying you must publish it for the world, but perhaps consider, this is there one person, just one, who has earned the right to read a single page. Sometimes sharing our hidden texts is the only way to truly understand our own story. If this journey of mine resonated with you, if it echoed a private struggle of your own, I would be deeply grateful if you shared your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me, what does courage look like in the aftermath? And if you want to be part of a community that values honesty over perfection, please give this video a like, subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that our scars are not secrets to be ashamed of, but testimonies to our strength. Thank you for listening with such compassion. Wherever you are, whatever your basement holds, remember this: you survived the dark. Now you get to decide what the light reveals.